So what are we doing today? Great to see so many new and well-known faces in the chat. We wanted to share with you some updates on MCP servers, and we call this a workshop since this should be quite interactive. I think we talked about MCP server with the developer community half a year ago when Eugen gave his workshop about monetization, and we talked about AI-assisted coding in the end. And Geoffrey, you mentioned already that you will do some experiments. And so finally it turned out that you had been ready with your MCP server a couple of weeks ago. And now also we have published our first Adobe Express add-on dev server in the beta version. And we want to introduce both of them to you, show how you can benefit differently from both of them, and then also hear your feedback and see what we can do as a community. Taylor, that sounds good. Do you want to kick off?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Thanks, Ingo. Yeah, so let me get my... All right, where's my screen share?
Oh, you also have some cool music there.
There we go. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. So we've got a few different things that we're talking about today, and a number of different speakers up here from Adobe, and then also we've got Geoffrey from our developer community, and we're going to be talking about MCP servers today. So we'll do like an overview, kind of introduction to MCPs in general, and then we're going to do a section focusing on the Adobe Express add-on dev MCP. And then Geoffrey is going to talk to us about the community MCP server for add-ons that he built, and share some of the differences, kind of the differences between the different MCPs. We're going to go over some tips for working with MCPs, and we will spend a bit of time at the end around building an MCP if we have time. But that's going to be first thing to go, depending on how discussions kind of go along the way. Right time to ask questions is whenever you have them. So we're expecting it to be pretty fluid. So as folks are kind of interested in different things, or we want to see or tinker with different things, we can kind of take some detours and do that. Cool. So Padma, do we want to go through our intro to MCPs here, or Geoffrey, did you?
So Geoffrey, like the first section is more like a very informal sort of an introduction to MCPs itself for the folks who don't know. So Geoffrey, please feel free to sort of jump in. I just had a couple of slides which just kind of sets the context here. But I'm sure, Geoffrey, you would have more insights here, and you can also just interrupt me. I just want to kind of keep this informal and casual. So I'll just kick off by saying that. So for those of you who are or are not familiar with MCP, you can think of MCPs as something which kind of directly gets plugged into your LLM workflow. So if you have played around with ChatGPT, with any LLM, any popular LLM out there, and have used that for building or for coding specifically, MC kind of plugs into those kind of workflows. And what it does is it delivers fast and context-aware access to... It basically actually accesses the right context for your LLM. And in our case, it's basically bringing the context from our public docs, which all of you refer to when you build Express add-ons. So the whole advantage of MCPs is that it directly plugs into your LLM and provides the right context to it. With Adobe Express add-ons, MCPs, how this helps is it brings very context awareness to the LLM. What I mean by that is very specific to Express APIs or add-on APIs, be it iframe APIs, be it your document.js APIs. That particular context kind of is brought into the LLM so that your entire document, the goodness or the richness of your entire documentation is available to you in your environment. So you don't have to keep going back and forth with your documentation that you generally do. The general workflow, what we think about is you're in your local environment, you're using the CLI, you're building your add-on, and then if you have to refer to any APIs, you go back to your browser settings and browser, and then you go to the documentation of the APIs in the browser. So we are kind of trying to avoid all of that, and your goodness of the documentation comes right into your local environment, which is your CLI. Next slide, please, Taylor.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to kind of mention here. Oh, actually, never mind. I will wait.
Okay, so I really like this quote. I read this somewhere, and it says that you should think about MCP server like a librarian. What it does, it fetches the right books, which we call the context over here. So when a developer is basically asking a question, when you query something about an API, or you have a question for which is related to Express add-ons, it brings the right context there. But then it doesn't write the essay for you. That's up to the LLM to do it. So it's almost like I bring in all the relevant context through the MCP to your LLM, but then at the end of the day, it's the LLM which kind of understands that and then writes the essay. So just this is a very, I think, common confusion out there in the industry, where MCPs are thought as ways to write the essays itself, but in our case, we are kind of like having these two separation, and I hope this example kind of makes that clear. Next slide, please, Taylor. Okay, so behind the hood, this is like an oversimplified diagram of what really happens. So, say you are on the extreme left, you are the person who is writing a query to the LLM. The query could be, it doesn't have to be like, the beauty of all of this is, as you know, it's all natural language. So you can write in plain English or in whichever language you want. You are basically asking something about Express add-ons. You are like, get me started, or I have this particular API in mind. How does it work? It could be any sort of query that you have to your LLM. Now, the LLM goes sort of behind the scenes, and it sees that, hey, in order to get the right context to answer to this query, I have a few MCP servers configured, and the LLM decides to invoke one of the MCP servers, or the MCP. In this case, it's a client server kind of a model. So the LLM decides that it wants to communicate to an MCP, which gets the context for the LLM. So MCP client talks to the MCP server. The MCP server decides where to get the context from. Documentation, we have kind of used this as an overarching sort of box over here, but there are different ways to implement how the MCP server gets the context. Geoffrey, for example, his MCP has taken a slightly different approach than our MCP. We'll talk about this a little bit more, and Geoffrey will talk a little bit more in depth about his MCP as well. So the idea is the way the MCP server gets the context can vary, the implementation can vary, but all in all, what it does is everything collapses into this into this workflow, and the LLM gets the right context. Once it gets the right context, it kind of gives the response to you by understanding the context, and by knowing what it needs to in order to curate that answer for you.
Cool. I wanted to just cover a couple more of the basics here while we're on these, because I always miss acronyms. I'm not sure if we covered this one on one of the earlier slides, but MCP for Model Context Protocol.
Yes.
And one of the one of the distinctions that I think is important to think about when you're thinking about this technology is it defines a communication protocol between these different models, these different tools, but it's not prescriptive about anything that's happening on the back end. So what these MCP servers are doing, where they're getting their information, all of that can kind of be different. And go ahead, Geoffrey.
Yes. So Roland asked that said it would be a good idea to cover why an MCP server. So if you think about your typical workflow, you would have several browser tabs open. You'd have I would have different pages of the documentation open in different browser windows, and then you have to switch between them constantly. And in some cases, even if you share the link with the LLM, it doesn't get all the information that you need. It's not able to scrape all the information from the website. So the MCP in this case, it's different because we are pulling directly from GitHub, where the documentation is hosted. So it becomes an expert on the documentation. It knows all the different things that the API can do, and it's current. It's very up to date. So whenever the documentation is updated, the MCP server gets updated as well. I hope did that answer your question, Roland?
And I think the kind of the like a succinct way to think about it is like information interoperability. So wherever you have your AI models running, wherever it's doing its thing, you're able to essentially reach across like distributed systems into other tools, that kind of thing, and share information like back and forth between these different tools and places where the models are running.
And then to add to what Geoffrey said, by the way, that thanks for explaining that. I would want to add that LLMs alone can answer a lot of your questions about Express add-ons, right? However, sometimes the information is outdated. So what happens is the information that LLM is speaking from could be from months ago and may not have the knowledge of the latest APIs that we just recently released. So the MCP also tries to bring the latest context or the latest knowledge, and basically is in sync with what's out there in our documentation. So that's another big advantage, that MCP brings sort of the latest context into the LLM. I do want to answer Ari's question about whether Adobe is hosting the MCP server. So we're going to be talking about two MCP servers today. The one which Geoffrey built, which I think is more like open source, and we have it available to everybody. The one which Adobe built is hosted in NPM, and there is no authentication required. So you're free to just configure the JSON and get started with it. Okay, so Dante has a question. He's asking if he can use the MCP server to build Express add-on. If so, what is the best environment? So Dante, you can, for the first question, just hold on for another couple of minutes. We have some great demos lined up. And we'll be talking about how you can use these environments to your advantage and how you can configure MCP server to build Express add-ons. And not just like basic Express add-ons. We will go through a few use cases that we feel really works well with the MCP. And then the second question is, once I develop an Adobe Express add-on, can I then integrate the MCP server into the actual functioning as users use the... Okay, so I think I know what the confusion is regarding the second point. So the MCP server is used during your development cycle. So think of it as a tool, just like the CLI, just like any tool that helps you build the add-on itself. Once you have the add-on built or it's ready to be shipped, MCP server, basically it's disassociated to the MCP server at that point. So you take the help of the LLM and MCP server to help you. It's almost like a coding assistant, or I should call it a coding companion to you. But once you're built and you have a production ready add-on itself, the users really don't know what tools you built using for the add-on, right? So whether it was MCP server or whether it was an LLM, the users don't really know anything about the details. So I hope that explains that it's primarily meant for you developing the add-ons using the MCP server. It's not in any other stages of the add-on lifecycle. Okay. Anything else that Geoffrey, Taylor, or Kalyan, you would like to add?
Not that will add much clarity yet. I think having some concrete examples and then talking about some of the different servers and kind of the differences between them will help illustrate some differences.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the demos would clear up a lot more
Yep.
things once people see it. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we can then, in that case, start with the Adobe MCP server, and I just have a couple of slides, and then we'll just directly jump into the demos. Next slide, please, Taylor. So we just saw this diagram just a couple of slides ago. Um, when I said that the MCP server basically brings the right context to your LLM, the way the Adobe Express add-on MCP server does is it keeps a snapshot of your public documentation in a form of vector DB. So it is still the documentation. It's just that it is in a format that is more palatable for the LLMs, right? Or for this kind of a workflow. So you start with a query to the LLM. The LLM understands it and decides that, okay, I need to get the right context for it, and it invokes the MCP server. What it does is it sends the query, but then we are because the documentation is available to us in a vector DB, we can sort of do a semantic search on it. What I mean by semantic search is that um, most of you would be aware of keyword search, for example, where if you have a single word that you type into, say, a documentation. Oh, the keyword search, actually a great example is if you just do a command F on your browser and type in a text string, it just kind of tells you where all the in the documentation where all the occurrence of that keyword is, right? That's a simple keyword search. But in case of semantic search, it's a little more complex there. It kind of understands the meaning of your query and then tries to fetch the right documentation there. So it's not just as simple as matching the right keyword, which sometimes in certain cases works great. And we have actually our dev site search engine right now is kind of based on the keywords. But in our case, we have implemented this using a vector DB. So the semantic search becomes a little more effective way of getting the right context in that case. Maybe Kalyan has a better way to explain this. I'll just pause and ask Kalyan, do you have anything to add to that?
To the semantic search, Padma,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you covered it well. Unlike keyword search, it understands the intent or the meaning of the prompt or the question, and then it queries accordingly and give relevant pieces. So in our case, as shown in the diagram, we are indexing the documentation, and then we use our the standard algorithms to search and pick relevant documentation in the form of a parent and child document, and then pass it as a context back.
Yeah. Geoffrey, you have anything to say?
I just wanted to add to Dante's second question about whether the MCP can be part of the add-on. I think that goes into the future of MCPs because it's still a very new technology. But if you've tried other MCPs, like if you've used Claude, you see that Claude is able to control your operating system. You can do certain things like that. So it's possible, I don't know yet, but it's possible in the future that we could use MCP servers to call scripts inside Adobe Express, similar to what people are doing in Photoshop already. Yeah. So that is
Cool.
Awesome. I do want to answer Ari's question here, who wants to know how to sort of use or install the MCP. So Ari, in order to let's talk about maybe the first box over here, right? When I'm imagining a developer talking to an LLM, I am imagining them using tools like VS Code, Claude Desktop, any of the popular IDEs that support the MCP, or like the Model Context Protocol. So all these popular IDEs today do support that. In your IDE, there is a special place where you can configure as many MCP servers as you like. So in our documentation, you will find the JSON that you need to put into your IDE config file, which kind of plugs now the LLM, which is sitting on inside your IDE, understands that these are all the servers, MCP servers available to it. So LLM would directly communicate with it, and the way it's able to communicate with it is with the help of this protocol. So just, I hope that clarifies. Okay, he says that that's I hope that's clear now.
Yeah, the good way to think about it here is like when the IDE, when these different AI code assistant tools are executing code, they're doing it in their own runtime. So by adding the configuration, they are then managing the install and the runtime where they're executing code to be able to call the MCP. So that's why you're not installing it directly. You're just giving them the info they need to be able to install it when they need to call the MCP.
Right. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we'll post the link on the chat here. Basically, we already have this out it's available, it's on our website. You also would be seeing this, a note in the changelog. And the JSON that I was just referring to, Ari, is printed right here under the quick setup. But then we have some great resources out there to explain to you what our MCP does, some examples, some tips and tricks, which we'll also be covering in the session. But overall, the idea is, I hope that it explains what the MCP does, and it also provides you with enough of guidance to get started with it. And with that, I think we can jump into our demos.
Cool. Did want to mention any feedback that you'll have around like the docs for MCP or anything like that, especially while it's a beta. If anything we can do to make this better for folks that are building with it, always happy for feedback. Cool. So I've got a few different kind of pre-recorded demos here set up, and then depending on timing, I've also got Cursor set up with the MCP running. So if we want to do some live action ones, we can too. Awesome. So this app is really neat. Is one of our teammates basically was able to take a photo of something in his house and like get inspired about wanting to build it into an add-on. And then with the help of an AI coding assistant tool with the MCP, was able to essentially go from being inspired by that photo to using prompts in the AI coding assistant to having a not completed, but a really impressive proof of concept within a matter of a few hours. So, it's not always immediate, but it is, a very short period of time to be able to do something so powerful. So you can see prompts going in. I'll describe this a little bit more in the next demos where we can actually see it executing. But here's the add-on that was created from those prompts. So it's actually interacting with the Express document. It's got a really rich user interface over on the right side, even with the click and drag animation. So everything very polished, kind of end to end. So really neat implementation of that. And I think a cool demonstration of what this type of technology unlocks, because it's not it's not so much the productivity specifically, it's kind of the creativity around like being able to think about things and describe things with your words, and then have that be able to translate into something technical, into something, an add-on that you're building. So a couple other demos for you. So one of the approaches that I like to do when I'm building with this is I use it to explore the Express platform. So as I'm using the MCP, as I'm using my AI coding assistant, I'm talking to it to ask about features, technologies, and kind of discuss the plan for what we're building. And this is an area where the MCP adds a lot of value, because the Express platform has a lot of different features and a lot of different capabilities. And discovering the right feature that you need or the right capability can be challenging. And so having this kind of quick access to the information that's in the documentation, and being able to draw on that to help kind of your own thinking about the add-on, is a really useful way. Is a really useful way for using this type of tech. Here's a cool example of refactoring an add-on with Spectrum. So my demo is moving a little bit fast here, but commonly when folks are creating an add-on, they'll use Spectrum to make their add-on have a little bit more of an Express look and feel. So it has like native responsive elements. And so what we're doing here and I'll rerun this one here once it finishes. We're taking this UI that's already existing, and then we're using this prompt. And let me go through this one more time. There we go. Actually, let me see if it'll. Nope. Not going to let me pause it. All right. Well, we need to soup up our video controls in the Express presentations. Okay, I'm going to exit out of present mode so we can actually look at the before and after. Okay, so here's the before over on the right side with a just regular UI. And then after we run that prompt, it's going to call out for the different documentation, type definitions. It comes up with its own to-do list for the tasks it needs to do, steps through those, and then here at the end, you can see we've got this nice user interface that's using Spectrum, styled to look and feel like Express. So great way to be able to take some of those tasks that would typically be fairly tedious and make them easier for yourself. Give you a big push in the right direction. All right, and this next one is actually adding a feature end to end. And actually, what I've realized with all of the zooming around in these is it makes it really hard to see larger context of what we're doing. So over on the right side, we have our add-on panel, which is fairly empty. It's just a standard out-of-the-box new add-on scaffolding. So you have a create rectangle button. And then my IDE is in the middle. I'm using Cursor that is connected with the add-on MCP. And then here I'm going to prompt it for adding a particular feature. So I'm saying add a feature that allows users to upload photos, shows them in a grid, and lets them drag and drop it onto the Express document. And I'm skipping over a lot of the different kind of stuff that gets returned, but these are the ones that we care about. Oop. These video controls are killing me. Sorry. All right. Okay, so it comes up with its list of tasks, and then there we go. And then it's calling this get relevant documentations and get type definitions. So it's going out to get that fresh information from the documentation, and then it's going to continue on. Oh, did it work? Okay, I'll let it do its thing now. Cool. So it called out to get the exact information that it needs to add those features. And you can see the code being generated on the left side. And then over here on the right, my add-on has now been hot reloaded while that's running. And I'm able to upload those images and then actually drag and drop them into an Express document. And what's really cool about this is like, this isn't just a UI feature or just a backend feature. Like, this is an end-to-end add-on capability where a user's interacting with the add-on UI, and that is then interacting with the Express document. So to be able to give it kind of, these commands, these requests, and be able to generate a full end-to-end feature like that is a really, really powerful thing. So in our next demo, I'm going to pass it off here to Kalyan. And he's going to show you of another way of kind of working with the MCP to build add-ons.
Thanks, Taylor. Yeah. Before we start the video, I just want to add a couple of notes here. Would you mind pausing it for a second?
I will minimize out, and then yes, there we go.
Yeah. By any chance, do you have the video with you? Can we play it directly? Because I just want to pause a little bit in the between.
Oh, sure.
Otherwise, that's fine.
Yes, let me grab it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, let me start what I wanted to demo here. So in this demo, so I've used a couple of MCPs to show or highlight the power of MCPs in an environment like Cursor. So what I'm using here is our MCP that we have built and another open source MCP called Playwright MCP. That's from Microsoft, and what it does is It's basically giving tools for LLMs to interact with browser directly. So what I mean by that is the tools were like open a browser tab, navigate to certain URL, click on certain element, get the screenshot, understand the page, read the logs, and so on and so on. Right. So I've used both of them, and I try to sort of vibe code the entire add-on. So what I did was I asked our MCP, using our MCP, I asked Cursor Agent to go through the available APIs and then asked it to come up with some ideas, which I can then work on. So what it did at that point is, Taylor, let's go to the beginning. Yeah. So it then came up with a bunch of ideas, and then Till, can you pause here for a second? Yeah. And then it came up with a bunch of ideas. So then I picked a simple idea. In this case, is a color palette extractor. So I asked that I would want to drop an image into my add-on, and I wanted to extract the colors from it. So if you see here, that's what I mentioned under MVP features. And then I just gave a little structure to the UI where I need a drag and drop area for the image, a progress section, and then extracted color list, and then a button to copy or apply the color. And then towards the end, I set certain guidelines. So what it asked it to do is always use Spectrum Web Components for UI elements, refer to add-on documentation using our MCP, and then after each step, I asked it to run the add-on to test it using Playwright MCP. And then a couple of instructions as to which. So in this case, I wanted to test it in our stage environment. So, but you can leave it as is, and our MCP will figure out how to test based on our documentation. Yeah. So, and then I entered my prompt that says I need to build so-and-so user requirements, and fire up the add-on first, see the initial state, and then start building. Yeah. So when the cursor got to work, what it did was it called our MCP, got the required documentation, and then understood the code base. And then once it got a good idea about it, so it began running. Let it play Taylor. That's fine. Yeah. Yeah, so it understood the code base, it read all the files. Once it got the context of what it's dealing with, it created a bunch of to-dos. So the first to-do is test the current add-on functionality inside Express. So as per the instruction, it tried to start the server in the background and then open up the browser automatically. I was not doing anything. And then in Cursor, I can interrupt and add my commands to the agent. So I said, wait for me to log in. And then I actually logged in. So that is me logging in and then handing over control back to the agent and setting back. So I said, I logged in, please continue. So what it's doing here is it's taking snapshot of the browser's page and understanding and figuring out where to test the add-on. If it's obvious, it'll be able to figure it on its own. Otherwise, using our MCP, it fetches relevant documentation. Our documentation obviously will have the instructions on how to test the add-on, so it can follow and do the same. So at this point, it got the initial. So this is the add-on that everyone might have seen that gets bootstrapped by our CLI. So just for fun, I just started a stopwatch to see how long it takes for me to build the entire add-on using our MCP. Yeah, so it does its job. So once it's done, it's able to see that if there are any errors on the console, Cursor automatically reads them and tries to debug using relevant documentation that it fetches. So yeah, there you go. So you have a basic UI with the drag and drop area. And then once I picked the sample image, and then it extracted a bunch of colors from it. So now what I did was I wanted to test the apply functionality. So I dropped a sample shape and then I clicked apply button and it used our APIs correctly and the color is applied. So I was just trying out whether it's actually working, whether it's extracting all the colors. So I tried out a different icon. Again, it extracted nicely. Now I was trying out the copy button functionality. So I noticed that here the functionality is broken. So I instructed it again saying that, the copy button isn't working. Can you debug and fix it for me? Check our documentation if needed. So that's all my command is. And then it went back to work, fetched our documentation. In this specific instance, the issue seems to be from the manifest. So it needed to add a permission in the manifest. So it added it, rebuilt the add-on, and it started to test it again. So it is trying to figure out to verify and load the add-on. So that's what it's trying to do here. Yeah. So once it automatically trying to connect to my local developer server. And yeah, it says, looks like everything, the UI is as expected and the issue is fixed. So I went back, dropped an image and clicked copy, and yes, it's working. So that's what I did. So basically started with a small requirement documents using a couple of MCPs, and was able to set up everything, in the matter of 10 minutes. So that's a time lapse of me building this end-to-end working add-on, a small use case. And then now once I'm at this point, next step is on me to polish my UI, make it production ready, fix any bugs, or even ask and iterate with the cursor or these IDs and then make it more polished. Yeah.
Wow, that was a really cool one. Yeah, I've got questions, but I'm going to wait until we get through some of the other demos, because some of my questions are about kind of the different code flow between the different styles of building. But wow.
Yep. So essentially, the way which you and Padma has put it up, right? So using this MCPs, we are giving more hands to LLMs to go do something on its behalf. That's what is happening here. Yeah.
And so for that one, you were using that requirements like PRD document to essentially define the process that you wanted the LLM to follow. So within that, did you also include steps around when you wanted it to call out for more information to the MCP server, or was the model deciding when to do that on its own as it was executing the task?
I just have that, since we deal with the terms like document, text, which are common with web standards. So I just instructed in one of my guidelines saying that if you want something related to add-ons, use our MCP. That's all. And then rest is up to the LLM to figure out when to exactly call it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So before I screen share again, hop back into the presentation, wanted to answer a couple questions. So let's see. So we had one. Let's see. Can I use MCP per server to finish an add-on in progress that I use React to create? So yes. So React and the add-on code and all of that, the AI models, like the LLMs, will be able to code and manage that. The MCP server is more of the tool that's being used to shuttle information about that's specific to add-ons to the model as it's building. So it kind of depends on what you're asking it to do, but the short answer is yes. That's it can help with that. If so, like you mentioned that your developer created the app and you're using the MCP server, so you can interact with it and do some kind of things with it through that. But you do still want to have a developer kind of go back through it, if you have to debug things. So it can be very useful for prototyping, for researching, that kind of thing. But you want to make sure it has a competent driver as well. Padma?
You just covered what I wanted to say, Taylor. So, Dante, it's definitely possible, and you can plug into MCP. You can use LLMs and MCPs in whichever phase you are in the development cycle, right? Something that you already started, and now you seek help from an LLM, plug in the MCP server into that workflow. So it's not as if that you have to start using it from the get go. You can sort of use the help on an extra hand anytime, and MCP server is just a tool, as Taylor mentioned. And then to what I was about to say, which Taylor just covered, that remember that the code generation piece is handled by the LLM itself, right? So LLMs are still hallucinating. So a lot of times the code that they produce may be incorrect. And then they could also be that they're not maybe efficient or the way that you would like your production ready code to be. So while you can maybe get it to the completion stage by providing the right prompts, etc., I would still take Taylor's advice that you might still need it to run it by a developer who can say it's okay, they've reviewed the code. That's the general sort of standard that you should maintain.
Yeah. When we get a little bit farther along in our presentation as well, I think revisiting like some of the terms and technologies and some of the boundaries between them would be a good thing to spend some time on, because it does tend to get pretty mixed. But they like the different tools like do have pretty strict boundaries in terms of like what they're responsible for, and understanding kind of where those are will help understand how to leverage some of these tools more effectively. To answer John's question about MCP being specific to generating code for the add-on. So in this case, yes, like this MCP is specifically for Adobe Express add-ons, but MCPs in general are open. You can use those to connect different tools. So in Kalyan's demo that we just saw, I believe you're using another MCP or in that one, aren't you?
Yeah, it's called the Playwright MCP.
Oh,
Playwright
nice.
is just the end-to-end testing framework, so they've given an MCP for that use case.
Yeah, so that's like the headless browsing, right? So this just grabbing the screenshots, and awesome. Yeah, so that's a great example right there, because that's combining the two MCPs to create like this entire add-on end to end. So really cool implementation.
Even your earlier demo showcases the point that Dante is asking, right? So you have an existing code base in the example or in the demo that Taylor showed. He already has an add-on and asked MCP or asked LLMs to use our MCP and polish the UI or add certain functionality to it, right? So that's exactly what we built it for. It's not just simply to begin a project with. Yeah.
I do want to add that, since you brought up that you can use it to refine UI, etc. Maybe this is something which Taylor would cover in tips and tricks. That if when you play with an LLM and an MCP and in your ID, right, what you would notice is that it tries to overwrite your code very quickly. So make sure that you are like saving a state which you want to preserve or you want to roll back to in later in case things don't go the right way. So I think we'll be covering that in tips and tricks section. But since Kalyan brought it up just now, I do want to call that out, that begin and try with some experimentation, be ready to fail, and then get into the more serious projects after that.
Awesome. Okay. Cool. So this was the demo that we just saw, and I'm gonna head on to my next one, and go forward and then back one. So my video doesn't start right away. Okay. Awesome. So for the series of demos that I have coming up, they're all from the same sample add-on that I was building, and they're taken from my actual like build process of creating that, which was a bit of a different workflow than what we saw with the add-on that Kalyan just generated. And so this will kind of take us step by step, implementing a couple of different things. And there's a few pieces that I wanted to highlight along the way here. So for this one, I have my existing add-on, and in my prompt, I asked it to, man, these video controls are killing me. I asked it to add a new shuffle shapes button that will calculate new values for all of the elements on the page. So this add-on that we're looking at here, before I asked it, that has a button that will add 3 random shapes onto the document. And I asked it to add the shuffle button to essentially just take those shapes and then generate new values for them. So like re-randomize the shapes that are on the document. And so that was the task that I gave it. And let me zoom out here so we can jump around a bit. So that was the task that I gave it. And so you can see it, let's see. So you can see for this task, it did not call out to the MCP because it didn't need to. So it already has the ability to add these shapes onto the document. And all I'm asking it to do is add a new shuffle button that randomizes them. So it has all of the knowledge it needs already because it can already add those shapes to the document. It's just adding new randomization functions. So this is just the model adding this feature. And so now, now I've added that shuffle button. Let me head on to the next one. And this is a neat one. Okay, I'm going to make it bigger, and then I will back out if we need to see something smaller. Well, all right, video. There it goes. Okay, so I'm trying to test something in here, and let's see. Yep, and it is not working. So I have an error that I had piped to my UI because I find that easier. I took that error, I pasted it into the LLM where I'm coding. And first thing it does is it calls out to our documentation. So it calls that MCP server to retrieve the relevant documentation for where I'm getting that error from. I'm going to call the type definitions. So in this case, I got an error back when the code I wanted it to do didn't work. First thing it did is checked for the actual information from the MCP server, and then it pulled enough information here to identify the error and then fix it. And so not only did I get a working add-on in this case, there we go. So not only did it successfully debug it, but I also got, let's see. I also got this explanation along the way of here's what went wrong. Here's the changes I made to fix it. So what's really great about using these tools like this is like, as much as it is just like you're typing words and this is happening, it's a great vector for learning. So for debugging in particular, it can be very useful, even when the debugging doesn't always go great, which I will talk about a bit later. But seeing the AI code assistant try and debug things incorrectly is also helpful for learning how to debug them correctly. So that was from this same build, and I've got one more demo from that one. Okay, so in this one, I'm at that same starting that point where we just left off, and I am asking it to improve the shave state history, to track real style and position information. So sorry, I am not at the same stopping point. Let me back up. Oh, sorry. These video controls are killing me. I'm sorry. Okay. So in this one, our starting point is that we have the shuffle shapes, we have the create shapes, and that button that was just broken, that was being debugged in the previous screen, adds the ability to save the style history for a shape. So that capability exists and works. And so my prompt from here is that I am asking it to improve that history, saving the shape history, to track more specific information around style, position, and the rest of it. Because before I was just testing the mechanism to store it, and then here I'm asking it to make it better. And let me make this one big. Now that you have the context. Okay, and so this is a really neat one. So it's going to call out for the MCP to get the type definitions back. And it got the type definitions. It's now looking at the code base. Give me just a second. Awesome. There we go. And so you can see it's now looking through the code base for the specific properties and the specific objects that are relevant to what it is I'm trying to store on these different shapes in my add-on. So this is a really cool example of how the information that's coming from the MCP server can significantly improve what your model is doing. Because here, since it got those type definitions for the pieces it needed, and then it looked through the code base for all of the relevant pieces that it needed, it was then able to implement exactly what I needed with the actual properties that existed on those shapes, rather than potentially hallucinating something or just missing something. Instead, it actually found the types, looked through the code base for the types that it needed, and then implemented the logic that I needed using that information. Cool. I think that's the end of this one. Cool. And I have this add-on queued up as well if we want to tinker with it, or use the MCP server to add new features to it a bit later. So let me double check time here. Okay. So I think, let's see. So I have some tips to go through, but I believe, let me double check my calendar here. Or we want to switch over to Geoffrey's MCP server now. Let's see. Geoffrey, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, for some context for attendees, one of the reasons we decided to host this was Geoffrey built an MCP server to help build Adobe Express add-ons himself, and he's going to be sharing that with us today, and yeah, as well as some information about how to contribute to it. And I think what's really cool about it is yeah, the differing implementation for what he's created versus ours, and yeah, kind of the significance of having different types of solutions available for MCP servers.
All right, let me share my screen.
It's the little. Have you done it on Ring Central before?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the controls throw me every time.
Okay. So the community MCP server is very similar to Adobe's own, just a little bit, a few differences, a different approach.
Sorry, Geoffrey. Yeah, there's too much of mic noise, and like your voice is very faint because of that.
How about now?
Oh, way better.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
All right. So before I talk about the server, I just want to show a bit of the features of the MCP protocol. So MCP server has these things called primitives, right? These are the building blocks of an MCP server, and there are three of them. There are prompts, resources, and tools. In this case, the prompts are predefined templates or instructions that you could use to guide the language model. I'll show that. Then resources, what we've seen so far is those are tools. So the tools enable you to execute certain functions. In this case, it calls a GitHub page, picks the content from the GitHub page, and then it teaches your language model how to go ahead to how to build it. So resources is GitHub in this case for this particular server. The resource that we're using is only GitHub. However, MCP servers can do a lot more. So if you look at the official documentation, they show you that you can connect to Git, you can connect to Slack, you can even connect to your databases if you have that. And in this case, the IDE is the client. The IDE is the client, the server. So it has a host server client structure. 1 second. Yeah. So it has you can connect to several other tools besides just GitHub, different data sources, etc. All right. So now let me show you my MCP server. Now, before the workshop started, I did some tests just to save us time. So, like I said, MCP comes with tools, and I'm using VS Code because that's what I use to develop. I haven't really used Cursor a lot. So VS Code has this window here where you can see all the MCP servers that you have installed. So I have the official Adobe Express add-on, and I have mine, which is called the Adobe Express Dev. And I have all these other MCP servers as well, GitHub, Figma, etc. The Figma one is also very interesting because you can design your UI in Figma and then use the MCP server to call it to read the design and build your add-on accordingly. So some of the tools that the add-on has, the server. If you come to the tools menu in VS Code, you can see all the tools that all the MCP servers give you. So these are the tools from the official Adobe Express add-on: get relevant documentations and get type definitions. And you can call these tools directly to ensure that the language model actually uses the MCP server. So mine has a few others. One of the major differences is mine has authentication. So to use it, you're going to need a GitHub personal access token, just for security. And then it has all these tools. You can get code samples. You can get assistant capabilities. You can implement features. You can also query the documentation, scaffold. So you can call these very specific tools if you want to do a specific thing. And then again, the one of the major differences in my own is that you can set the knowledge source. So you can use if you have, let's say you have slow internet or you want to be able to do this locally, you can set the knowledge source. So if you set it to GitHub, it will work the way it's supposed to work by default, which is it will call the documents directly from GitHub. But if you use local, it will clone the documentation repo on your system and then call it locally. So that's just an option. Right. So I ran one of the tools, the get assistant capabilities tools from mine. This is how you call it with a hashtag. And then I asked, what can this server do? Then it goes on to tell me everything that the server can do. It says based on the assistant capabilities, it now goes on to list everything that the add-on can do, and it tells you the keywords, specific keywords that you would add to your prompt to make sure that it uses the MCP server. It also tells you like that you can access real-time docs or you can access local documentation for offline access. All right, so it's currently running in GitHub knowledge mode for live documentation access, and you can switch to local mode if needed. So it also, like it says, it also uses a GitHub personal access token. So when you are starting out with this one, you want to be able to you want to check its capability. You can easily do that like that. So I have here in this second command, I used the official Adobe MCP server, and you can see that both of them can work together. So you can have both installed, right? And one of the MCP interface is such that when you give it a command, it calls the server, and then it shows you this green tick to let you know that it was successful, and then so that's how you know that it actually reached the server, and then it goes on to tell you all the all the magical things that the API can do. So it goes into all that in detail. So let me do one more thing, very important. Instructions, right? So MCP servers are part of this whole thing called context engineering. The one part of it. So context engineering is about just giving the LLM the right context, the right information for the task it's trying to accomplish. So we have some instructions that you can add. I don't know how this works in Cursor, but VS Code allows you to give your LLMs instructions. So in this case, this one was shared in the Slack group. Oh, where is it? Okay. So this is a set of instructions that was shared in the Adobe Slack. It's very detailed. I encourage you guys to use this. I encourage you to use this instruction when you're building MCP server. So it tells the server what to do. It tells you are a senior Adobe Express add-on developer using strict standards. It goes on to tell you the required implementations, the standards for the layout. Even tells you things like you should use a vertical UI, a vertical layout. So I'm just going to copy this, and I have a new blank instruction file created, and I'm adding it there. So now every time. What's this? What is that? Okay. Hold on. Let me just quickly find one that works.
Geoffrey, that goes as a MDC file. So probably
Yeah.
if you rename it, yeah, because the cursor or the instructions usually were that.
Okay, it's an MDC file. Here it's an MD file in
GitHub, is it? Okay.
in VS Code.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So actually, we're supposed to say apply to all. It's not supposed to show that. Sorry about this scrolling. Apply to all. Yeah. So I'll just say. All right. So now we can add instructions. We can add those instructions. Project guide. So I've now added that instruction file to my server. So anytime I'm to my prompt window rather. So anytime I submit a prompt, exactly, Dante. This is like system instruction for MPC. So yeah, it's all these details sets it on the right path. It knows what you want. It knows the context that's working in. So now you can just go ahead and prompt it. I have a add-on project. Excuse me. All right, so I created this test project. So I'm going to show you how I use it. I just talk to the add-on through the mic, which is very useful, especially for people like Dante who are not developers. I would say something like, my add-on has a create rectangle button, but I want to replace that button with another button that enables me to select objects in the document and get the information, all the information, including the width and height, the color, the feel of the objects, etc. So I need you to help me implement that. Make sure you stick to the Spectrum documentations and use my MCP server. So I will specify. Okay, let me stop recording. Then I'll now specify that I want this to use a tool from my server. So I'll say get, okay, query documentation. That's the tool. And when I enter, I'm going to do this magic. Oh, I should have put it on agent mode. And one good thing about this is that we have checkpoints now, so you can restore checkpoints. So you can do this non-destructively, right? If the server does something that you don't like or messes up your code, you can just go back to a checkpoint. So here we go. It has given me all the information I need. It's searched, it got all the info from the documentation, and then it gives me code that I can use. So let me just switch to agent mode and say, and then you can read all the instructions, all the details it gives you, right? Oops, what's that? So, and again, the way my MCP server works is if for any reason the server is not able to get the information you need, it will just keep going. It will keep going until it gets something for you. So it could fail a bunch of times depending on how you prompt it. I don't know why. What is this? Okay. How much time do I have left? Okay. So I've switched to agent mode and I've now told it to implement the code. So it's going to actually edit the code itself. So there we go. So it's changing these files. It has you can see happening in real time. So just like Padma mentioned earlier, it's you definitely need a driver. You need the human eye to look over what the LLM generates, and you definitely need to test it extensively to make sure that it's not hallucinating. So that's how it works. If you switch to agent mode, it goes ahead to edit the code itself. There we go. And it's getting all this information from the documentation.
Geoffrey, one of the questions that I think would be good to kind of speak to here is when comparing kind of the MCP server that you built here and the one that we built for Express. Can you highlight kind of some of the differences and some of the strengths of the some of the areas where what you've created can do things that ours can't?
Okay, so one of the things you can get specific some of the code from some of the sample projects. You can read the sample add-ons. So for example, let's say we have a sample add-on where you can implement auth authentication. So I would say get code example. This command and said, let me switch to Axe so it doesn't change each time. So I'll say I want to use the sample code from the Adobe Express documentation to implement auth authentication into my add-on. How would I do that? So that's one of the differences. It pulls directly from the sample code. It also see the other tools it has.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
also
that
allows you,
sorry, go ahead.
Go on. There's also an implement feature task tool where you can specifically tell it a specific feature that is documented that you want it to do and to do that specific thing. So major differences is, and then again, I don't know if the Adobe MCP server, the official one, has been updated to read the Spectrum documentation. So mine does that as well. It's able to read. You can see that it's able to call the documentation for Spectrum UI as well and use that to create the code for your add-on. So those are the major differences. Authentication, Spectrum UI, you can get specific sample code for from the projects that are in the docs.
And so to tie some of this together for folks listening, the kind of the significance here is that extensibility. So like Dante was asking, is if this is like a system instruction for the MCP. So Geoffrey's created these as kind of these functions that this MCP server can call to retrieve context and information from these different places outside of what is built into the official Adobe MCP. So that extensibility is really where this becomes so powerful. Is you may have a specific type of add-on that you think that needs a certain type of knowledge that is more useful than others. So like maybe it's working with really large video files. Maybe it's using Angular for the front end or a certain front end library. You can essentially do whatever you want on the server side to be able to kind of collect and aggregate that data and that context and that information. And then when someone is using this community built MCP, they can then call out to that function and gather all of that context that may be more useful to their particular use case. So it's a really, really cool project that you've created here, Geoffrey.
Thank you.
I had.
So, and the GitHub repo has been shared. So on the README page, you can see how to install it, how to use it. I'm also looking for feedback and contributions. It is a community MCP server, so everyone is welcome to contribute to improve it. One of the things I'm considering, one of the features that I'm planning is, if you look, for example, in the Discord group, in the Adobe Express developer Discord group, there's so much information that has been shared there, different challenges people have faced, etc. So we could also potentially add that as a data source, some of the fixes, especially things that people have that we tested and figured out solutions to some common challenges that everybody faces. Yeah.
So I want. Is it okay if I grab the screen share?
Okay, I can stop sharing, right?
Yeah, I think I can just grab it. I just wanted to make sure that was all right. Okay. Thank you, Geoffrey.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so this is the repo that Geoffrey mentioned. It's linked in the chat. And yeah, this is a really cool kind of community initiative, and the pieces that you make or add to this are things that other people can use when they're using the MCP server. And so for the next section that I'm going over, which is around tips for using an MCP server, certain things that I had to do when I was building would be like opportunities to enhance this offering that would have helped me get past the hurdle that I was stuck at there. So yeah, this is a really neat way to collaborate and help folks build together. All right, get back to my slides.
Taylor, I had a quick thing to add.
Sure.
Just so that like people are aware that do visit the instruction guide both for Geoffrey's MCP as well as us. We posted the links on the chat there. I say that because different MCPs can be installed into your IDEs. Install is probably the wrong word, but can be plugged into your IDEs in different fashion. In case of Geoffrey, I think he's taken a slightly different approach. In our case, we have an MCP JSON that you can, a config JSON that you can like just copy and paste into your IDs. So we can also maybe go over this in our next office hours just to help the broader audience to just get started with it. But the instructions are there in the documentation, so do take a look and try it out.
Awesome. Thanks, Padma. Okay, so for this section, I had kind of tips around using MCP servers. We're running short on time, so I'm probably going to jump around here a little bit. I've got my IDE, I've got Cursor pulled up with the application I was building in the demo apps if we want to like see or tinker with anything there. And so there's a couple high-level things that I wanted to kind of get across with these. So before I get wrapped up in any details or anything, wanted to make sure that I kind of touched on those a little bit. And so earlier I was talking about some of the overlapping terminology and where that starts to get a little confusing. So if you, so I'm using Cursor, which is my IDE. And inside of Cursor, I have my LLM. I have my AI tool. And so this is where that model is running. And I can change between like ask and agent mode, which changes how it's interacting with it. But I can also change which model it's calling out to. So I can pick between different, I can pick between different models from different vendors and that kind of thing. And so when there's code generation that's happening inside of my IDE, that is coming from the LLM. That's coming from one of the models. When there is information that's being retrieved from somewhere else using that's being passed back into my LLM, that is from the MCP. And the reason that distinction is important is the models and the context in which they're operating can look very different from model to model, from conversation to different conversation. And so for some of what I'm talking about in the tips, a lot of it ties back to context. And, if I'm asking it to do something with an add-on and I have the MCP server connected, I will get a different response from GPT 4.1, from like Claude 4, or from something else. And so as we get into this territory of using MCPs, using AI assisted tooling, setting up rules and all of that, like it all starts to become fairly like fuzzy, kind of art more than science type of thing, because there's so many different factors at play. So, for example, you can have a set of rules defined that will work with one model and then not with another, or they won't work once you have a very long conversation and that context window grows so large. So there's a lot of reasons to try and understand kind of the context and the boundaries between some of the different tooling. For some of what I've learned from building with the add-on MCP, it can be a really big creativity booster when it's working well. You really want to try and avoid failure loops. It's very discouraging, and it's hard to tell what's going wrong. And in my experience, it's much faster to just bail out and then start again from wherever you were at, and rather than trying to course correct something that's generating something that's not working. And a big reason for that is to maintain that momentum. From what I have found from using this tool for this purpose, the Express platform is fairly uniquely challenging for the AI code assistants. There's certain things about the architecture, the terminology that make it just a little bit trickier. So that's something to be mindful of. And what I have noticed in trying to improve the quality of the results that I'm getting back and what it's doing is I've had a lot more success with improving my own process and my workflow for building with the AI tools and what I'm doing than trying to iterate on an increasingly prescriptive set of rules, which is not a good place to invest your time. Also, because that's also changing how models interpret rules, what's supported or not supported, how much room they have for rules. All of that is changing. And so it's better to invest in your process for working with these tools to be able to create things. So I think an important part of that is finding the right workflow that works for you. I really like the explore, plan, build approach, which unlike the PRD approach, where Kellyanne showed us this PRD document that he had created, where it stepped through and did multiple steps in order to create this entire app in a very short period of time. What I did with the sample app that I was building was, for each like major feature that I wanted to add, I would have a conversation with the LLM about what I wanted to add, what the capabilities of the Express platform were, and I would ask it to come up with a plan for adding that feature. And then it would give me like a step-by-step kind of, I'm going to do this, then this. And that gave me an opportunity to course correct before it created anything and say, that doesn't exist yet. Like, that's going to be a problem for something else. And basically come up with an implementation that's actually a good idea before it goes out and creates the code. And so following that process was a good way for me to be able to build this, because I could do each individual feature, then create branches and capture it along the way. And other thing I wanted to call out with this is just being mindful of your context. So for my workflow, when I'm in Cursor, I will try and keep like one feature per conversation window. So you have these different like chats where you're creating these features. And over time, especially if you're iterating on them, these can grow larger and larger. So my rule of thumb is one feature per chat window, and in that way, it helps keep your context window a little bit slimmer when you're working with the model. Okay, running out of time, so skipping over these. One of the things I wanted to mention here is, as you're using generative AI to create these add-ons, is you want to make sure that you are creating a foundation that they can build from successfully. And so what that means is, before asking for all of these like really big, powerful features, doing simple prompt for things like error handling and asynchronous code handling, and making sure that those pieces, like end to end, are structured the way that you want them to, in a way that's going to be supported, before you start asking for some of the big stuff. Because when it starts generating code, that's what it's going to draw on. Is it's going to look at how that is implemented elsewhere, and then it's going to mimic that, especially if that's what you're asking it to do in the prompts. So that one's very important. And the other one, you saw this a bit in the demos, is what I've found helpful for myself is, in those early prompts, is asking for features that give me more visibility into the execution and potential bugs that might show up. So I will ask for things like a text area in my add-on UI that gets updated anytime there's an error or something successful, in addition to console logs and that type of thing. So finding ways to give yourself better visibility into this black hole of AI generated code is a really great way to help keep yourself from getting stuck. I mentioned this earlier, failure loops. You want to recognize them and just get out early. Like if you spend a half an hour working through 5 different prompts, like you will get a lot farther than if you take one and you're just trying to fix it over that same period of time. So it's almost always better to just bail and then restart early. Good reason to use branches and good coding practices. So you can pick up where you left off. And what I wanted to mention here, and this is a good segue to the community-owned MCP, is MCPs aren't always going to be enough for what you're trying to build. So you may need information that the LLM doesn't have, that the MCP doesn't have, and you still want to have in your project. So for for the add-on that I was building, I wanted to add the selection change API, which was a new API. And it had some API reference pages, but it did not have a how-to guide quite yet. And so the MCP server wasn't able to return documentation sufficient for the LLM to figure out how to use that successfully. And one of the reasons for it is there's a proxy layer between the document and the add-on UI, which is kind of tricky. So what I ended up doing was going to the add-on samples repo, finding an implementation that I liked, copying that file into my project in Cursor, and then in my prompt saying, add this feature, like use the pattern that you see here. And that ended up working very well. It was able to take that and then successfully implement that feature. And so the MCPs are a tool for helping the context that's in your LLM. But you as the person using the LLM, that's an area that you can also take an active role. So finding ways to like change your project structure, bring in outside files, are great ways to help the tool generate code more effectively. And this is also an area where this is a good reason to this could be for example, the community-owned MCP server, since that has a function to be able to call that samples data, if I had been connected to that MCP server when I hit this question and it didn't find it in the docs, it could then have called the samples repo and then found that sample for me. So this is an area where there's room to where there's really a lot of room to create and expand on this community-owned MCP. Cool. Then I had some sections on rules, but we're running out of time, and I wanted to save some time for discussion. So my TLDR for the rules is use them to guide the LLMs, not police them. You don't want to be overly restrictive and say like never do this, don't do this, don't do this. It will not go well. So just use light rules, guide them in the right direction. You don't want to police what they're doing. As long as you kind of keep that in mind, you'll do fine. What that looked like in practice for me when I was building some different add-ons was like 4 rules that basically specified like the context of how an add-on is running, areas where there's kind of overlapping terminology with industry standard, and then telling it like, hey, anytime this topic comes up, call out to this MCP server. So yeah, pretty lightweight rules. Let me stop sharing here. And I wanted to save some time for discussion here because we had check for questions or see if anyone else wanted to hop back on. We still got about 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks, Taylor, Padma, Kalyan, and Geoffrey. I really liked the community server as well. And it's good to see that there's a good reason that both of them really exist in parallel. And it was a good example when, Geoffrey, you said, oh, you're looking for new opportunities, what you could add to your MCP server. And for example, there's a lot of goodness even on the Discord server. And Erin also shouted out and said, oh, yes, we are considering this as well and looking at this. But this is exactly a great example, since we have not implemented this yet, since there is great content, but not everything there is kind of verified and official documentation on our end. This is why we probably just don't loop it in directly. But this is a great opportunity for the community server to loop it in, and we might select stuff from it, make it part of the official documentation or just a filter of that, and add to ours. So going forward, you will also always have the official MCP server from us, which is perhaps more selective and has less docs in its as their content. And then you have the community-driven MCP server, which may have additional sources, code samples, documentation from the community or samples from the community. And you can use both of them in parallel, which is really great. And I think at the very beginning of the session, there was a question whether this will come to UXP or not. I had the same question to some of the product teams just again this week. The answer is we don't know yet. All teams are experimenting with MCP servers. You have seen some of this at Developers Live. But we don't know whether or when we will announce something. But also, this is a good room for community-driven projects. Reach out to Erin or me if you're interested in that. Perfect. Any other questions now, also from the group here? And you can also, everyone can go on camera and use the microphone to ask questions.
I've got a question while we're waiting for others. I was curious, and maybe this is something that we could like do as a follow-up or do it during one of the express office hours or something. But like, let's say I had an idea for something I wanted to add to the community MCP. It would be great to see like a little bit more of what like the development experience for that kind of looks like when you take that repo and you're adding new tools and trying to pass it through like the MCP server and kind of debugging that and that kind of thing. Like it'd be great to see what it looks like to kind of build on that a little bit. Which isn't really a question, but yeah, I'm curious about it.
Is Ruben still here? I think Ruben really wipe coded.
He might have dropped off.
The one example with it, where we also did get different feedback from people in the community. Some really fell in love with wipe coding. Others really don't like the expression itself, since it feels like just playing around with it. It became very obvious today that at least today it's not good enough to just wipe code and not look at it with an understanding of coding and development skills.
Well, I just want to thank Geoffrey. I know I get his name pronounced wrong all the time. Sorry, that's just the American part of me, I guess.
No, you actually got it right.
Oh, I thought it was Geoffrey. Okay.
Definitely.
But I want to thank him and thank you guys too, because I'm so interested in this. You know, everyone knows I'm not a coder and I'm working with these students, and so I don't mean to harp on that, but they have limited time, and I really need to learn how to get my stuff done. And I think that this is a way for me to get it to the finish line and then have somebody look over it and then submit it. You know, so thanks for this opportunity, because I could see myself. I understand a lot of this stuff, and I use AI a lot, but I'm just not a coder. So I just want to thank you guys for hosting this. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Dante. Kalyan, I had a question for you just regarding the like using generative AI and the MCP server with like the PRD approach versus kind of like versus iterative. Like have you noticed at all, like when with that initial like generation, or when it's going through so much of the building kind of in one flow, like just that context window getting so like, what does it look like to kind of iterate on the application from there? Like, do you just start like a new chat when you have to like fix it? Or because I guess like my assumptions would be that like it's like grown so much and used so much context during that initial step that it's harder to kind of like interact with it and iterate from there. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, Taylor, so as you were mentioning, right, the context is the key here. As we keep chatting with the LLMs, the context window gets bigger and bigger. And what these IDEs does is they try to summarize or pick the last few messages and pass it in the context. So how I see it is that once you have the PRD or the requirement set up, that's like your source of truth. You can always refer back to it anytime in any of the chats that you want to build. Say you're building a small new feature, just tag it so that LLM knows what you're building end to end. Because LLM since end of the day, they're just random token generators, so they tend to diverge in different ways when they doesn't have the complete view of what you're building. So take your time to refine the need not be a full-blown PRD, just a simple requirement docs. You can even generate that with LLMs and then modify it by hand, not to overdo it, but keep it simple, straight commands or the instructions that you want LLMs to work on or how you would want your project to turn out. Yeah, so that's how I've been doing, and that's how it helped me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Will for the like demo add-on that you built for that, like with LLMs, will you or would you be open to at some point like publishing the code for that? I was just kind of curious, like as far as like like learning material like for other folks and that kind of thing. I think there's it's an interesting vector, I think, for building add-ons.
Got it. Instead of sharing the generated code, what would love to do is give the source, the prompts or the requirements file that I have used, so that people can drop in and then generate on their own. Because end of the day, this generated code, it may not be good or it may need tweaking, but the source files or the templates can be reused. So that we can do.
I'd like to take this one offline because I've got some ideas around that too. I've got some questions. Cool.
Yeah. I like love to encourage people to have their own versions of how they would want it, because it's really customized and it's tuned for your project. The better it's tuned for your project, the better the responses will be. And these IDEs understands, draws patterns from your existing code or existing project, and then builds on top of it. Yeah.
Kalyan, Padma, what is coming next to our MCP dev server? It now can read and understand the documentation, as you said. So it will, I guess, grow with the documentation. Every new piece of documentation will be also available in the MCP. And what else?
A lot depends upon the feedback, Ingo, and that's why we encourage people to please do try it out, and then whatever you feel is lacking or what you like, drop a comment in the Discord channel. But some of the things that we have thought about is we do feel that any UI generation for add-ons, we've been sort of wanting that more and more of Spectrum guidelines, Adobe Spectrum guidelines, are used in the process. So we'll definitely be expanding the knowledge source to incorporate that. And then we've also, I think, a few developers who've tried it on have talked about a little bit about more scaffolding sort of tools inside of MCP server. So we'll be exploring that also a little bit. So this is the beta version, by the way, and we called it a beta version for that reason, that we wanted to collect more feedback and sort of fine tune it a little bit more. But yeah, you will hear a little more about this in the next officers, and based on the feedback, we'll shape the next roadmap items.
Okay, perfect. And so on the one hand, for those who want to build with Spectrum today, Geoffrey's MCP server is available for that. And we heard we need your feedback, so please share this, and please share this also on Discord, so everybody can see it. We can learn from it. Geoffrey can learn from it. Geoffrey, what's coming on for your MCP server? I guess you also need some feedback. What also would be the best way for you to receive feedback, or how could others contribute to what you're doing?
Okay, so you could, the code is open source, so you could fork the code or open a pull request if you've made changes. And then you can send me an email as well in case, or reach out or on Discord or Slack in case you want to discuss specific features. One of the things that I like about the official one is that it seems to use a vector database, which makes it a bit more reliable. So I'm considering that as well for the community one. Yeah.
Is the like issues and is the issue board and like is the GitHub repo a good place for the community to interact with it in terms of like discussing ideas and like improvements, that kind of thing? Awesome.
Yes, it's completely open source, so
Cool.
feel free to jump in.
Awesome. I've got to drop, but yeah, just wanted to thank everyone. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yep.
Perfect.
This was
Thank
great.
you.
I hope
Later.
folks found it useful.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to feedback and contributions from the community.
Yeah, thank you all. We will make the recording available for this from this session, but only for those people who have registered. So you can come back to this URL and look for this, and everything else. Ask us questions on Discord, in the forums, on LinkedIn. Thanks, everyone. Really liked it.
Thank you.
See you guys.